Good afternoon, good evening, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to another episode of Value First Data here with AC and Klemen and part 4 of our trek through the unified revenue view. How's it going this week?
Looking good.
Good. I spent the morning outside. This is my first indoor call today, as you know, Chris.
Fancy.
Fresh brain.
Yeah. No, I feel like it gave me a new vigor for life, you know?
All right. You might need it for this part of the conversation. Because we are talking about deciding on the scope of your unified revenue view. And so we're still before you build. We talked about prerequisites, all the processes that are usually not talked about or owned in HubSpot, like invoicing and order fulfillment and recurring revenue and all these back office things that play a big part in the unified revenue view. Then we asked 4 questions during the current state audit. How do you forecast? How do you know when a customer is at risk of churning? What happens between deal closed and customer successful? And how do you identify expansion opportunities? That was a great conversation last week. And then here we are with scope decision. Lo and behold, your business model determines which objects matter most and which workflows are critical. So we're going to help you select the model that best matches your revenue patterns to focus your implementation. Do you two ever get to this part? It's often comes up, I think, related to winning by design framework of the revenue modeling and all these different layers, right? At some point, you need to understand how your business works, how revenue flows. Do you guys run into that as far as like people understanding what it is and why it's important?
It's interesting because I feel like this was it the first session where I called out that marketing was not listed? Did you fix that first?
I don't think I have. No, I apologize.
Weekly check-in on whether or not Chris is. Chris asked me to do a lot of things, so every time that he doesn't do something that I asked Chris to do, it gives me a little bit of a sigh of relief that.
It's a true story.
But what's interesting as we've gone through this is there's been a couple of times where you've asked me a question, and I will tell people that most of my work is at the intersection of marketing and sales. But some of this is often on the further side of sales, not that it should be, is what I'll say, but it tends to live buried farther from sales and away from marketing in a way that I think of like 1 or 2 situations, but not a ton of instances. And that just keeps making my brain be like, but why? Which is maybe why we're talking about this, because a unified view would be helpful.
That is exactly why we're talking about this.
I am, closer to where Casey is. Not so often we're involved in those discussions where it's really syncing. But I just had a chat on a Friday with a potential customer where we started talking about AI enablement for the whole marketing and sales team. but then in the last 5 minutes of a call, they said, "Oh, as no, we're just in touch." Our leadership would way sooner approve a scoping project for the integration with QuickBooks because we don't have revenue data, so they cannot do forecasting from HubSpot. Can you also do that? So we'll get in more of those discussions, definitely.
Yeah.
The farther we get is what is a customer, and then deduplication and all that, less about real revenue data. But from my perspective, I think the goal should be that all the revenue is somehow logged in HubSpot. Otherwise, you're looking at false data or incomplete data, and then you'll be data driven without data.
Yeah. And so the reason that Klemen and Casey are where they are, and I need to start sharing this episode far and wide. A recent episode on the GTM Live podcast, why it's time to bury the MQL, with John Miller, the Marketo co-founder who helped popularize it. If we could have everybody listen to this episode, maybe 25% of our job would be done here. Because this is how everything gets siloed. Leaders come in and they think, it's MQLs, it's leads, it's pipeline. And when you hear John Miller talk about why he leaned in so hard in the early days, and it had everything to do with brand and nothing to do with actual marketing performance, it's crazy to think about how this stuff just got ingrained in the system to the point where he left to a different company, demand base, and none of that stuff worked. And bring it up because a big part of the serious demand waterfall from 2006 was that it ended at closed won. It just ended. So when we say we're talking about all these revenue processes, talking about integrations with QuickBooks, right? That's not in this CRM land and marketing and sales, especially marketing platforms. You haven't been focused on that. You haven't been able to touch it sometimes, and you haven't asked to touch it because you're focused on leads and conversion, MQLs, SQLs, all that stuff. And somehow attaching dollar amounts to it and just, doing whatever you can to do attribution and all these things without the full picture. Right. And now that we can get that full picture, because HubSpot does have all these commerce objects and it's clear, Commerce Hub, the knowledge of its existence and the expertise to implement it properly is sorely lacking in this ecosystem. So we have to start with basics like this, talking people through their business model so that they can understand, no, you can't do. There's very little chance that you can create a unified revenue view with deals only, right? So that's the steps that we first went over. And we think about the chasm between sales and customer success, right? All of this should add up to don't be surprised. Maybe give yourself permission to be in the same spot that everybody else is. But let's work on this problem and help people get to these unified views. So we're going to just highlight some of these, I think. And just to put in perspective, the reason we're calling these out is because it impacts the data model that underlies the unified views, right? And so there's a few different ways to slice it. We've got core B2B models with SaaS, professional services, transactional B2B, enterprise sales, industry specific, manufacturing, field service, healthcare, education, financial services, and then, hybrid patterns, which is often the challenge and the opportunity if you're doing multi-hub in HubSpot. And my example from when I was working on the inside was manufacturing. Like there's always, whenever it comes to growth, there's always like a rock solid revenue channel that got the company where they're going. And then they see opportunity, usually in a different revenue channel or a different market. And I think they can just do the same things that they were doing over there, over here now. And it almost never works because we do things like, okay, we sell business to business here. Everybody's ordering online now. So we can just pick up e-commerce and go B2C and have the same sales motion and use the same sales team and things like that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
All of that stuff is supported by these data models. So if you can't get to here, you're going to have such a hard time like getting to these unified revenue views.
Yeah.
Which one would you guys like to highlight?
Like to have?
Like to go over?
Okay.
Or have, either way. We could make this like a
I prefer
SaaS is
long
one
sales
I would-
cycles and complex stakeholders. That's my
okay, so I heard SaaS and I heard enterprise sales.
I'm more
Go for it.
joking. Let's do SaaS.
I mean, I'm interested in SaaS because of a challenge I keep having in my mind where, closed won is where someone starts a subscription. And if you have, monthly subscription, you have no term. So then how do you manage all that? If nothing else, it would be, our thought process will be useful for my learning process. Just thinking through, I can tell you how I am managing in our HubSpot. I'm not sure if that's the right way, but no, this is the best I could come up with so far for the complexity of that. But yeah, definitely curious where we land.
Well, since you picked that one, we can make it quick. Thankfully, HubSpot is coming out with a contract object that's going to make SaaS and design like specifically for SaaS, annoyingly so. That the key to all this is kind of managing and measuring revenue on the same plane, like the same rules across objects. And, as soon as the definitions change based on where it is in the journey and who's in charge of it and who's gold, like by it, like you start to get disconnect, dysfunction, like all over the organization. And that's where they're like, all right, keep HubSpot or Salesforce over there. We've got our accounting system that has the real data in it, and we'll work from there. We'll download a bunch of stuff. We'll make slides, make spreadsheets, and that'll be the source because that's the one that has to be right for the books and all that. And you sales and marketing people can go fight over attribution. Now that we're going to have the contract object, that another thing I need to update here, Casey. It's about picking like one, how can you pick an object that supports, recurring revenue, renewal cycles, usage-based expansion, all of the goals that everybody has through one lens, right? Because even as we've had Commerce Hub show up, it's been challenging and next to impossible without custom objects and, some HubSpot wizardry to report on revenue across deals, subscriptions, invoices, orders, like in one place, right? So I'm curious to hear how you guys solve it, Klemen.
With a lot of manual and backtracking of data. In a way, I mean, it's a combination, but for the subscription part of the business, where I don't know for how long the subscription will be active, I might put it for 12 months term. And if that stops sooner than that, I would go back and update that term. So the line items and the terms of those line items on a deal would match. And then the revenue on closed won deals are matching the actual numbers realized at the end. There are probably better ways, but with the size of the team and the numbers we have, this is still manageable.
Yeah, that's a part not really taken into account here, as like size of the organization and volume. But at the end of the day, it really, shouldn't probably. You just can get away with lots of creative ways when you're small.
But my goal is to have revenue aligned with what I see in HubSpot. This is the primary goal. These two numbers should match.
So you mentioned these two numbers, revenue and HubSpot. Where's the other revenue?
Stripe.
Okay. Yep, they need to reconcile. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So enterprise sales, Casey, what do you got there?
I was joking.
Okay, you get another try then.
Professional services.
There you go.
I hate a long sales cycle and complex stakeholders, but who likes that? I'm sure there's someone.
Enterprise sales, that's who.
So is the question, how do I set up professional services?
What are we highlighting? I guess, why is it important to pick, like, challenges you've run into?
The challenges, importance, wow. So one of the things that I think is challenging about professional services is, let's call it the flexibility in what delivery looks like. So a SaaS subscription is more straightforward. You pay for access to this thing, you get this thing. Professional services, a HubSpot audit can mean a lot of different things. I have personally sold $500 HubSpot audits, and I have sold $5,000 HubSpot audits. So I think from my perspective, there's some challenges in reconciling deliverables and revenue. And then also worth, I think, noting that like some of the cost metrics, I think this is maybe utilization, is a lot harder to capture and track.
Agreed. So what we've seen, usually these organizations like that focus on this part, like in order to scale and grow, like get the whole billable hours model, making sure everything ties to utilization of the resources, and all the flexibility kind of honestly gets pulled out. Everything gets based on hours, and we lose most value-based pricing, capabilities, which turns it into kind of the third one, which is, how many onboardings can we do and how fast can we do them in, and makes everything transactional, because then it's easier to measure and create the unified view. But where this gets interesting, like project-based delivery, milestone billing, and utilization, right, is here in professional services. Fulfillment tracking and maintenance contracts in manufacturing can be looked at almost the exact same way, right? So I would bet like 80+% of works probably will land in this hybrid patterns case. But when you were doing the lead gen thing, Klemen, you were pay per result, right?
Yeah.
How did you help companies confirm results? Because I would imagine they would need some kind of unified revenue view to understand lead to dollars.
We should have done that better. This is the most honest answer I can give you. What I mean by that, we never touched their CRMs. We took over all the work until scheduling a discovery call with them, booked that call on their calendar, and how they manage that in their CRM attributed. I think they were kind of labeling the source being us as a service, because we were then asking for reports how many of those are closing. So they had the tracking system, but we never directly touched their CRMs because of just ease of access, and we didn't need any approvals or anything. We're just delivering the results. But we were having review calls with them to go through calls we booked for them and ask them for each of them where it stands, how was it, to help them understand that ROI, if you will, on the service we provided and what they paid for. But we didn't have hard data. And
they didn't have it.
I mean, they didn't have it. I was getting always those questions, but because of we've been in pharma life sciences space, people are hesitant to give access to their CRMs because of all the NDAs and whatnot. So it was on a sales call, when I got that question, when I explained, hey, we're never asking access to their and the same to your CRM, it was a feature, not a bug of a service. So we kept it that way. So looking from the unified revenue and unified customer review and all that, we should and could have done it better. But within the game we were playing and within the market we were in, it was more of a feature than a bug.
Yeah. And again, like, it's so pervasive as far as like the industry and everybody thinking marketing and sales is like, that's how we grow. Even if you're still doing programs like that, one of the key factors of the unified revenue view is to be able to see like this. So if you were investing in the service that Klemen was providing, and even though he was saying, or it's often focused on just getting the meeting, right? Because you've decided as an org that like getting the meeting or the demo is a very important milestone. And when you get that, your pipeline builds. You can now show, like, very easily, like, if the vendor is doing their due diligence, like, yeah, this many meetings, like, led to this many dollars, right? So it's like the ROI goals that many visibility goals, I'll say, that many organizations have, of understanding dollar in versus dollar out, like, is what we're trying to accomplish here. And in most systems, on the CRM side, you can't see it because it's buried in deals, and you lose just all the visibility related to resources required to win, and what happens after. We're working with a client right now that the sales works to get the contract. They get paid on revenue generation of the client, and there's a whole onboarding process, a whole, like, success motion that has to happen, to where no revenue is had until, like, months down the line, right? And that team they were working on custom objects, like bringing that whole onboarding process into HubSpot. But when you say, like, let's grow revenue and we want to focus on more contracts, but you don't know which contracts are leading to revenue after the sale, like, you're blind, right? And that's forcing teams like that to have multiple systems, have more meetings, have more exports, right? And ultimately build their unified revenue views, whenever they have those meetings.
And I think the trap, or the root cause, partially is also related to the MQL thing we started off today. Those MQLs and SQLs and deals as the end goal, having a close one, I think in a way was caused by a proxy of which team is responsible for which result, which can be measured, not understanding what that is and what the business goal is. For the marketing team, the easiest is just be measured on the number of MQLs, not bothering what happens with them. And then you find a proxy. Okay, we need 200 MQLs per month because we know that the funnel then what happens. But I think that's changing with many organizations.
Which part?
This review those KPIs and then responsibilities, because it's becoming more fuzzy of who is doing what. Marketing and sales are more and more interchangeable, which means it's hard to just be measured by those false and fuzzy numbers. And with that, you immediately get the conversations of business processes and what we are now talking, what should be the real revenue numbers, where those should be stored, and then how we can track the success of any of the activities and how to do distribution.
And as this is your friendly weekly reminder of, like, the impact of this, right? In my personal example, one of many, working for a manufacturer, like, also selling into pharma, like you were, Klemen. It's not hard to create strategy and say, here's the top 10 pharma companies in the world, and here's where all their locations are. And here is the strategy, like, and we know that if we get the meeting, like, you really can standardize and show up in the right way to make it look like this, right? Demand waterfall side. But in 2021, we did a brand new digital event, like marketing and sales working together the right way. And then you get somebody like Pfizer ready to sign, like ready to place the order, right? And then the factory says we can't deliver by the end of the year. And you lose the deal. Like totally, like this is the whole campaign of the whole company, the strategy. Let's go win in pharma. Let's try to get in this place we haven't been in 13 years. And then we get in there, do all the work, right? Because we have no like, and then when you go to these strategy sessions, right? And it's like, how are we going to manage data in the CRM? And how are we going to improve these metrics when we go down this funnel? And then the whole map ends at closed won. And something that was very much after closed won got in the way. And that's why we break down these stages like value creator, adoption. Like, did you deliver it? Like, can it be delivered? Right? So that's why this is so, detrimental when the whole life cycle gets in the way, of the purchase here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Is there any situation where it is just like a straight path like that? Like I can't think of. I don't know if I can think of anything that I just buy like one time and never again. I mean, maybe like I had a conversation. The last call I was on before this call, we're moving from another. They're moving into Sales Hub from Pipe Drive specifically for anyone that cares. And we're rebuilding some of their reports at this point. And we were building their waterfall report from Pipe Drive into HubSpot. But if you don't know, HubSpot doesn't quite have a waterfall quite like it doesn't look like this. There's no report in HubSpot that quite looks like this. So we were showing some options and he was like, this is so dumb. Like, why? I just want a waterfall. Like, I just want the funnel. And my colleague who was on the call with was like, well, that's because HubSpot doesn't really believe in the funnel. They believe in the flywheel, which, Chris, you're laughing because it's aspirationally. Right? But it did just like having that conversation and then coming here. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything where it's like, I'm only going to buy this. I only have one relationship with this company ever, and then it just ends.
It's getting rarer and rarer.
Yeah,
I think. And again, the reason that we're doing this, like all of the issues that everybody's been dealing with, right? No visibility because of like we're using the waterfall and we're using, these built-in metrics where we don't know our business process. We just do it the way that HubSpot or Salesforce or anybody out of the box. Let's use one deal pipeline because that's how you're supposed to do it, right? Like that causes all these things, right? All of the friction that we know. Yet when you try to solve these specific things, like the handoff problem, you're automatically pitting sales versus service and success, or marketing versus sales. When sales is saying, yeah, it's not a linear process. Like, of course, we might need to skip a stage or go back stages. And marketing's like, well, that's going to mess up our metrics. It's like, so let's build a bunch of damn workflows that make sure no matter what sales does, it always goes through these stages, even though the buyer doesn't go through those stages.
Please don't diminish my life's work, Chris, publicly.
That's what you signed up for here, Casey. I'm sorry. That is my favorite and least favorite example of RevOps just missing the point, right? And I get why you get there, because you have expectations put on you from leadership. We need these KPIs. We need to understand the flow from MQL to SQL, how long it takes, right? And then the out-of-the-box reports require each stage to exist where it screws everything up, but then it doesn't match how the buyer buys. It doesn't match how the sales team sells. Everybody in that equation knows it, including marketing and RevOps, and they just try to get it done. And yeah, you might show some numbers or some reports, but everybody's behind the scenes, not trusting any of that.
But we made a plan last year based on those numbers. So how do we compare it if we change it?
Oh, by exporting everything from every system and putting together slides and then, feeling good about ourselves.
Okay, problem solved. We're done.
Yep.
Yeah, I think those conversations we're having are super important for that exact reason. Things can be done better.
Yeah.
Because I now start laughing at questions. Hey, can you help us identify which accounts have the highest upsell, cross-sell opportunity? I mean, yes, but you need to structure what it means and who that is and how your process works. Then you can build that with how you've been managing your processes in your CRM system, whatever you have up until now. If that doesn't support you, have a quick look at that. Then you need to solve the foundation first before we can talk if these are those 5 or those 5.
Yeah. And that's why we're here. Like, we're choosing to simplify in a different spot than usual. Like, instead of just, hey, let's just do stuff in contacts, companies, and deals, and we'll add properties because it's easy to associate 3 objects, and we don't want to worry about, this more complexity. Feels complex. Why am I having to put data over here and click over there? Right, first of all, it's never been easier to do that and then not impact and actually create a better user experience in HubSpot, because we can show associated data very easily in a contact record or a company record or a deal record, right? But only if there's data in these other places to show and show in context, right? And when you can simplify here and understand that most organizations are going to be here in the hybrid patterns, like every layer, as simple as the layer itself gets, adds a layer of complexity. And when you're spending your meetings arguing over what constitutes MQL and SAL and SQL, you have no chance on getting to an understanding that's going to create a unified view, right? So trying to simplify the language so that we can embrace the reality of, we have hybrid patterns, we've got multiple revenue opportunities, which is what's driving all of this, right? It's like, man, we should be selling contracts too. Like, that's how this other company does it, and they made a bunch of money and it's so great margins, right? But everything we've done is built to win the deal and then move on and get more new business after that, right? Not like, if we sell a contract at the beginning, great, but after that, that's not my jurisdiction, right?
Did we get to where we wanted to today?
If we helped you to document
Never.
your business model, yes. And again, this is probably a classic case, as classic as it can be, only a few years old. AI, just give all your deals to AI, right? Give all your payments, like invoices. It'll tell you which business model you have, and it might surprise you, right? And then from there, you can take this playbook and just start to run down, like, okay, do I care about this, or do I care about this, or both, right? And just put yourself in a better place to have the conversations you need to have, and get it documented. Create common language so that teams can start working towards, the same goals. So which one are we picking? We're picking product and service. That's what I'm picking. I think. Yeah. So next week, because we've picked our scope and we did all the homework to get ready, we're going to go into some object setup inside of HubSpot. So we'll look forward to doing that with Klemen and Casey.
Can't wait. Interest object, your favorite. I don't know. That's actually, there's a lot of Chris Carolyn favorite objects.
I mean, if this one hits, this solves the problem. Like if this one replaces leads, like it should. As a little teaser, every interest record tracks authentic engagement patterns that reveal readiness, not lead qualification or extraction. Because unified revenue views, they need that front end. That's why HubSpot's so important. That's why you can't get rid of these marketing stuff. That's why everybody else wants to know it and wants those numbers to go up, but they have no idea how it connects because there's no connection, there's no visibility. Meanwhile, HubSpot's just giving you such a wealth of data and intent signals and all the engagement and behavior information. Today's update, like automatic tracking of website clicks. Man, right? But if you don't connect it to your revenue data, you guys know what happens, I think. So yeah, I am excited for that.
I need to get up to date. I skipped the morning show. I skipped both morning shows and I missed so much, I think.
Yep. So with that, I look forward to digging into this with you guys next week.
See you next week.
Have a great day, everybody.